The day is used to raise awareness of possibilities the internet and other information technologies bring to societies. The question we're asking today: is Africa using integrated media effectively in enterprise development? Joining us to discuss the topic are Yaron Assabi, he's CEO for Digital Solutions Group, and Dirk Dijkstra, who is Head of Communications at Ensight from our Cape Town studios. A very warm welcome to you, gentlemen. I'm known straight right here in Johannesburg with you, Yaron, on what is going on in this particular space. You work across the continent, and I want to talk, first of all, if we are utilizing this resource effectively enough.
Most definitely. I think that mobile has changed Africa. We've seen mobile learning, mobile health, and government applications appearing. The adoption of mobile has been phenomenal. Mobile internet has allowed us to leapfrog a few technologies, and we are now at a point where almost anybody can access the internet from their mobile phone, and internet adoption has unbelievable impact on GDP. More than 10% internet broadband penetration has a direct correlation to about 1%, according to the World Bank, of GDP increase. So I think there's an opportunity to create jobs and really grow the economy using mobile internet in Africa.
Dirk, I want to come to you in Cape Town. We are talking about telecommunications on this day. I want to ask you about the same thing that I've asked, and really why I'm drilling in on this question of whether we are using this effectively enough, particularly when it comes to doing business, and for the small business person, whether they're using this resource enough to be able to market themselves.
Well, I do think e-commerce has taken off in South Africa. It still lags behind quite a lot behind European American markets. Mobile advertising at the moment is also picking up slowly in South African markets at the moment. I do think there's a big problem, of course, with connectivity and the bandwidth. Speed of bandwidth is unfortunately quite slow. It's very expensive, and we see all people and youngsters around us using their mobile phones. But I think more can be done, basically, e-commerce wise, and mobile phone adoption, basically.
Dirk, when you say more can be done, what is that more?
Well, I read an interesting article from Arthur Goldstruck last week, when he was referring to, I think 8 sea cables have been lying to South Africa. I think one of them is actually entering Cape Town this month. There is actually enormous capacity when we're talking about bandwidth in South Africa, but unfortunately only very small percentage of that is actually being used at the moment. And I think that's all down to companies wanting to make money and basically not making that bandwidth available. It's still very expensive, very slow in South Africa. There is plenty of capacity apparently. For some odd reason, it's not being used at the moment.
I want to come here to Joburg. Yaron, now when you hear something like that, on the back of that, it goes back to the question then, if there's so much capacity and there's so much opportunity, are we then capitalizing on it, or if we still have all these impediments and we're not able to go past them?
I think that the new cables that have been alluded to and that have been deployed recently certainly increase capacity. We did have shortage of capacity. I think it's always a supply and demand issue. So as people demand the internet, I think the mobile network operators and telco companies in Africa and Middle East will definitely invest more in infrastructure. And we're seeing amazing adoption with low-cost smartphones. Smartphones have now become very affordable. I'm holding one here that is under $100, which is 800 Rand. And it has internet access. You can have applications on the device, and it is making it affordable for anybody to really use and be able to adopt it. So I think that now that we're getting to the level where anybody can have access to the internet, we're going to see big adoption rates.
I want to go to Cape Town now, Dirk. When it comes to being affordable, compared to what is happening in the rest of the world, I mean, you do have to say that here in South Africa, for instance, it is quite expensive to be able to access, when it comes to not just the internet, but even what is happening on our mobile space. And that has been a conversation that we've been having in South Africa for quite a while now when it comes to affordability.
Yes, I mean, for example, my daughter's got a mobile phone contract. She gets 30 megabytes a month. I mean, 30 megabytes is nothing. I gave her access to my modem the other day for a school project. I think she used about 400 megabytes in about 2 hours time. So unfortunately, a lot of people just have to cap their internet usage. Browsing the internet, using Facebook, for example, or buying something online, it's just too expensive for many people. And yes, we are hitting about 10 million users by the end of the year, but that's still only about 20% penetration. Whereas if you look at European countries, it varies between 60 and 90%. So yeah, there's still a lot to be done, and apparently there is plenty of capacity. It's just a lot of people are still making too much money, I think, from the average internet user.
So Dirk, though, do you think that cost is the reason that we probably are having that low penetration that you allude to?
Yes, definitely. I mean, you know, you can obviously have ADSL at your house, which is probably a bit more affordable than 3G access, but then again, it's all about, you can download at night, for example, for half the price, or you can browse South African sites only for a certain amount of money. So it should be free, it should be unlimited and uncapped. And yes, I think prices are dropping fortunately at the moment, but I think there's still a long way to go before we're all fully online and fully mobile.
Yesterday I was listening to a commentator talking about a price war that might erupt in this space. Do you think that could happen, where we could see, not only will they be affordable, that we could see a lot of these services becoming free in the future?
Most certainly. If you look at Kenya, for example, in Kenya, when Airtel penetrated the market, and Safaricom before that was the dominant player, today internet costs in Kenya are actually much cheaper than South Africa. To send an SMS is a seventh of the price. A voice minute is eighth of the price. So I support what Dirk is saying, and I believe that costs should come down, and competition is necessary. So as the consumer is becoming more demanding and more aware, I think we're going to see it driving competition driving prices down.
What I would like to say to you, because what I would like to ask you rather, is the theme for this is focused on women, it's focused on girls, and looking at the African continent and how many women, you know, are on the continent, how many women are driving business actually when it comes to the small entrepreneur. You were saying that is something that we do have to take cognizance of.
Absolutely, because mobile has liberated and given security to women, especially in rural areas, the need to communicate, the ability to use the phone for emergency services, but also for trading. Mobile money has had a huge impact on Africa. It's been very, very positive that people can transact from their mobile and send remittance to people that are far away geographically from them and be able to transfer money. And we have more phones in Africa by far than bank accounts. So I think for women it's been very liberating from an education perspective, for children and for girls specifically, because that's the theme of today. Education has had a phenomenal change because of mobile, because of the reach, accessibility, the ability to deliver information a lot quicker. And I see it with my young girls. They are 8 and 12, and every single time they have a school assignment, they Google everything on their mobile phone.
I mean, I can't even imagine what happened before Google, you know, that we actually went to libraries before. Dirk, I want to ask you really, really quickly. I cannot end this conversation without talking about giants like Facebook, like WordPress, for instance, that has made it available for people to have websites without going to a designer. What does this do just in terms of, you know, the skills that will be needed in the future? That would it mean that it needs to be more specialized if you want to get into this space? Because so many of these services are becoming free now, that where people used to make money off of making websites, you know, that's becoming less and less available now.
Yes, I mean, obviously internet usage and e-commerce, you know, for business and female entrepreneurs, there's plenty of services out there. You can put a website together, you know, basically in 5 minutes. You can get some free credit and start advertising on Google, for example, and then it's all about, you know, communicating with your audience, you know, trying to get people back at your site and trying to get people, you know, buying your product again. So there's plenty of services out there, there's plenty of resources, and also plenty of agencies and people out there that can help, you know, entrepreneurs and marketeers nowadays. It doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. It's all available. It's out there. So yes, I would advise anybody to, you know, to go with the e-commerce boom, basically.
But Yaron, what I do want to ask you there, where you talk about entrepreneurship possibilities or the opportunities, what I want to ask you is, here in South Africa, for instance, and also on the African continent particularly, is there enough funding, or are there structures that are there to support people that would like to make, you know, are innovating in this particular space? Or are we seeing that most of the innovations are coming from overseas countries like the US? Dirk. That question was to Dirk.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Dirk, Dirk, what I was asking you was that in this particular space, when you were talking about entrepreneurship in this space, I was asking if there are structures that are supporting entrepreneurs who would be able to make some kind of a change here on the African continent, or will we continue to see innovation coming from countries like the US?
Well, I think there's a lot of, you know, startups nowadays. There's a lot of innovation hubs. I see a lot of courses nowadays. A lot of workshops is being held for SMEs, For example, next month there is the MarkX exhibition for marketeers in Joburg. There's also a big digital pavilion, so I would advise anybody wanting to get involved in e-commerce to go and visit it. And all the resources and help is available there.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dirk. That was Dirk Dijkstra, Head of Communications at Ensight. He was joining us from Cape Town. In studio, we had Yaron Assabi, CEO at, and I've just gotten a digital solutions group. Thank you so much for joining us. Fantastic conversation. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.